Washington, D.C. January 21. Protesters walked during the Women's March on Washington, with the U.S. Capitol in the background, on January 21, 2017 in Washington, D.C. Large crowds are attending the anti-Trump rally a day after U.S. President Donald Trump. Well, what a year. It was inevitable that a 2017 which began with the inauguration of Donald Trump, a president dogged by a swirl of sexual misconduct allegations who also seemed intent on whittling away at women's rights, would trigger some kind of angry backlash. Few, however, could have predicted the shape that rage would have taken. That it would have caused millions to march. That it would have driven black women to galvanize and use their voting power to elect a Democrat in deep Republican Alabama. That it would crescendo into a loud roar, one that, by the end of 2017, would sound very like the words "Me Too." The first roar came with the Women's March when, not just in the United States, but globally, following Trump's inauguration, women across the world came together to march in protest. Some 3.3 million women took to the streets across the United States, as well as many on the streets here in Scotland and the UK. Among the chants of the day was singer-songwriter Fiona Apple's retort to Trump's Access Hollywood tape, "Grab em by the P," boastings, "We don't want your tiny hands anywhere near our underpants." But it wasn't until October 5 that the loudest roar would begin, after a series of allegations began to emerge around the producer Harvey Weinstein. It started with allegations from Rose McGowan, Ashley Judd and other actresses in The New York Times, then Asia Argento, Lucia Stoller and Mira Sorvino in The New Yorker, quickly followed by more, Lysette Anthony, Lauren Holly, Lena Headey, and the stories were chillingly similar, and seemed to provide a primer in how male power is used to abuse and humiliate women. Then, on October 15, actor Alyssa Milano posted the message, "If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write me too," as a reply to this tweet. And the world shifted. There were 12 million posts on Facebook within 24 hours. Such has been its impact that Time magazine made its Person of the Year the Silence Breakers, the women and men who spoke out against sexual assault and harassment. We are still living in what some describe as the Me Too moment. Me Too has often seemed unstoppable, rippling as it has out to all corners of the globe, with harassment allegations affecting almost all work sectors: entertainment, politics, hospitality. Scandals rocked the UK Parliament and Holyrood. Due process seemed, at times, to get lost in the panic. In Wales, Labour Minister Carl Sargent killed himself after being sacked amid allegations of harassment. Meanwhile, not just Hollywood, but also Bollywood has been forced to examine its treatment of women. Tweets in France were hashtagged balanced and pork expose your pig, and in Spain yo también me too. Stories were told in India, Arab countries and in South Africa, where the granddaughter of Nelson Mandela described how she had been raped by a former partner. No one can have failed to hear this roar. And no one can have not been chilled by some of the stories. The Me Too movement has clearly changed the way we look at relations between men and women. Each week it shocks us with fresh revelations. Salma Hayek just weeks ago described Weinstein as "my monster." Catherine Rossiter alleged how in a 1983 production of The Death of a Salesman Dustin Hoffman, not only repeatedly groped her, but, once backstage, pulled her costume up to reveal her breasts, in front of staff. But, of course, this year, for women, has not been solely about Me Too. There have been uplifting positives. Wonder Woman, directed by a woman, Patty Jenkins, became the highest-grossing superhero origin film, and Star Wars The Last Jedi rocked a feminist plot, featuring female heroes at all levels of the rebellion. In Scotland we've seen progress through the Parliament of both the Gender Representation on Public Boards Bill and the groundbreaking Domestic Abuse Bill. MSP Monica Lennon, herself a significant Metu voice, launched a consultation on period poverty. Yet, for all the edging forwards, there has been plenty of horrors in terms of women's rights. Where there is conflict or violence, always there is abuse of women, and, so, in Burma, widespread rape of women and girls accompanied the horrific ethnic cleansing of Rohingya Muslims. Central African Republic armed groups used rape and sexual slavery as a war tactic. The Russian government decriminalized some acts of domestic violence. The World Economic Foundation's gender gap, for the first time since its records began in 2006, reported that the gap between men and women had widened. In this context, where the Metu movement now takes us seems crucial. Social media upwellings only take us so far, and then the question arises of how to capitalize on them. To some extent this is already happening. We already see massive changes, workplace awareness increasing, unions involved in zero-tolerance campaigns, new mechanisms to report harassment. But, at the same time, there's a danger that activists are talking in echo chambers. While there has been widespread condemnation of Weinstein, there are many people out there who still see groping and unwanted touching as trivial, and would dearly love women to shut up about it. They like to caricature this as a movement comprised of snowflakes griping about small incidents of harassment, even flirtations, as if they were the same as rape. Countering this will be a chief challenge for Metu in 2018. 4. When earlier this month Matt Damon was pilloried for talking of a spectrum of behavior and highlighting the difference between patting someone on the butt and rape or child molestation, he was expressing a not uncommon opinion. And, on some levels, Damon is right. These behaviors are not the same. But that's not exactly what most Metu proponents have been saying. In fact, it seems like a willful mishearing. What the movement is drawing attention to is the fact that these acts are linked, and that they are all symptoms of the way power is disproportionately distributed between the genders. They are abuses of the power, humiliations, and only the victims know how traumatizing they are. Meanwhile, it's a pity that a man like Damon, with his so-called mansplaining, has got such a high profile on this. Because, after all, we do need men involved. We need men who are prepared to listen, to be part of a genuine conversation, to be vulnerable, rather than protective of their privilege or fearful that their own gropings may be exposed. The movement needs men who understand the difference between mansplaining and being part of the debate. The Metu movement also needs to reach further beyond the elite world it often still seems to occupy, and empower the working class and those who feel they are never heard. That Time magazine made its Person of the Year not one woman, but the Silence Breakers, says a lot, in the end, about how far we have yet to go. These women were brave and important. They collectively created a moment. But it's sad that this is what brings them to Time's attention. There have, it's worth remembering, been only 4 individual women in the whole history of Time who have been Person of the Year. 2017 was about victims forging a solidarity, and saying, enough. It was about drawing attention to the kind of bullying and humiliation women are frequently subjected to in the workplace. Both men and women have woken up. Sometimes we have looked at our own lives, at what we, as women, have accepted as normal, pasts we have buried, shame we have swallowed down. Some men even, as filmmaker Morgan Spurlock did, when he outed his own history of sexual misconduct and alleged rape, have acknowledged themselves as part of the problem. Everything looks different. There is no going back. Metu has created a springboard for 2018. What's needed now is for society to make the jump.